All righty, welcome back to another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today, I'm coming out of retirement for a short stint. Believe it or not, I am still alive. Brandon has not kidnapped me and locked me in the basement or anything like that. I've been let out. Uh, so today we're going to be talking about the OU Alabama game. Um, Obviously, a pretty solid game, and maybe also a few of my thoughts to this entire season since I've not literally said a word in like 8 months now. But before we get into that, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. All right.
Hey,
So
for 7-8 months out of practice, whatever the timeline is, it's a pretty smooth intro there, man. It's good to have you
some
back here.
some things you just never forget. I
It's like
mean,
riding a bike.
I feel like I probably said that at least 1,000 times, probably.
But yeah, over the years, yeah, probably 1,000 times is shooting it low. I think your intro though, you brought up a good point since we haven't been able to have you on there for a minute. I think it'd be kind of fun to start with just kind of your overall season thoughts. The people who watch and listen to the show, and they obviously know how Hose and I feel. We cry about it every weekend. We cry about each video, each preview, each post game. I always say is one game closer to the offseason. One game closer to the offseason. We're almost there. And me and Hose have gone back and forth on it. There's a lot of things I think wrong with Oklahoma, whether it was Seth Luttrell is terrible, whether it is the multitude of injuries that still exist for Oklahoma. I've never seen anything like it. I think it's one of those two things. The defense has been really good, but what do you think if you had to pick? What is the problem with Oklahoma, and why are we so bad for a majority of the season?
It's a good question, and it's a loaded question. Um, it's not one thing. I mean, the first thing going into the season, obviously, everyone knows about the injuries, and people going into the season, if they didn't know about the injuries, they quickly found out about it. Really, the injuries when you look just the wide receiver room, when you're missing your top 5 or 6 guys, and then you're playing third stringers. And not to say that third stringers aren't good, like Zion Kearney and Brennan Thompson. I mean, I guess Brennan Thompson, you could argue maybe he's the second stringer, but when you're putting those guys as number ones to go against the number ones of the defensive backfield for your opponent, there's a little bit of a difference. I mean, whether they're young or they're just maybe not quite as crisp, and there's a reason why they're second or third string. It's really hard to get open. But also the injuries along the offensive line, and even going back, replacing the entire offensive line in one offseason with an incoming freshman class and a hodgepodge of transfers. I mean, Spencer Brown has been. I don't even know. I can't even describe what Spencer
Not
Brown's
good
been.
is I think the nice way to describe it.
Until last night or until Saturday night, and then he played fantastic, and it was incredible, and it's like something I've never seen before on him. I mean, when you put together an offensive line that's made up of replacing everyone, nearly everyone, I know Sexton and all that, but replacing nearly everyone, you have injuries along there. You're playing, Heath Ozida, which he's a friend of the program. I remember interviewing him.
Part of the show.
And it just, and they never had any continuity along that offensive line. I mean, where did they start? 7, 8 different combinations or something crazy like that. So when you have no continuity along the offensive line, wide receivers can't get open. I don't care who you put back there. You could put Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or, Josh Allen. Good luck. I mean, no one's getting open. You don't have time, and you're running for your life. I mean, I think I told you on the phone. I mean, what summed up the season was that Ole Miss game when it was literally Logan Howland was at left tackle, and the game was out of reach. But it was third or fourth down, and I think it was OU's last possession. Logan Howland barely got out of his stance, and the defensive end was already behind him.
Jackson's lap. Yeah.
And hadn't even touched him.
Yeah.
And so I don't care who you are. There's no way. But it's amazing overall. The thing is, where I feel comfortable, people were calling for Brent Venables' job, was this team has never given up. And the team is still bought in. And they believe in the culture. So I've never had a question. I remember a couple weeks ago, one of my family members asked me, I mean, do you think Brent Venables is it? And I do. And I just think it's not only the injuries, no continuity along the offensive line. Seth Luttrell was in over his head. He was the safe pick, the cheaper pick. He was the Brent Venables, I think, is very loyal. And I think he went with the safe pick because he also brought in Zach Alley, the young hotshot defensive coordinator, which he's been fantastic, of course. I kind of think that he was a little nervous about rocking the boat and totally on the offensive side of the ball, just because he's doing it. That's what he was doing on the defensive side of the ball. In hindsight's always 2020. He should have went out and hired, I forget the guy from Penn State or anyone that would have been interested in the job. Should he have done it? Of course he should have. And then also you put all your eggs in a basket and you let Dylan Gabriel walk. And naturally, I would probably do the same when we have a fight. I mean, if Dylan Gabriel would have stayed, Jackson Arnold probably would have transferred.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the season overall, Oklahoma, it's turnovers and just inopportune mental errors, mental mistakes, and injuries in the offensive line. Defense overall has played well. When you look, despite the turnovers, I mean, they were in that Tennessee game. I mean, I know to some degree Michael Hawkins made it look a little closer. Maybe it should have been. Really, the only games that they got stomped and blown out was Texas and South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And everything else has been competitive. And the Missouri game was painful. The Ole Miss game, I mean, it was just painful. And it's just they were making the mistakes but they were figuring it out. And I really think it's unfortunate because the defense is one of the best in the country. They spent more time on the field than probably most teams, most defensive units out there. They're put in inopportune positions because of the amount of turnovers. I think Jackson Arnold going in this game had like top 10 in fumbles in all of the FBS. The turnovers, inopportune positions, and they still played extremely well. And it's incredible what they've done. And it's a shame that Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman's last season is the way it is. But I think what it has done, it's laid the foundation. And the foundation might be coming together in how they played against Alabama. And maybe they're starting to buy in and figure it out. Now, what's going to end up happening is they're going to go hire another offense coordinator. So we're going to just
That was my next question. Because, like, first of all, I agree with everything you said. I still think Brent Venables is the guy. There's a lot of debate online and between Sooner fans everywhere of whether do you move on or do you stick with Brent Venables? I am with you to stick with Brent Venables. I do think the team, since the Seth Luttrell firing, I don't think Joe John Finley is the answer at OC, but he's shown the willingness to adapt a little bit, try different things, and the offense has, became a little bit better. I think the Ole Miss game really is kind of the start of that game. You took a lead into halftime against Ole Miss in Oxford. That's a very good team there. You obviously beat the shit out of Maine, and then you invent a new way to lose the Missouri game, which was, that was painful. That was I agree, but I think that Ole Miss game is where you started to see signs of life, and that's where the team started to kind of show that they might be okay. Alabama game, which we're going to get into, obviously, very soon, was fantastic. That was awesome. I think everybody in Sooner Nation is really excited about that. Players, fans, coaches, everybody. I think we kind of deserve that one. But before we get into that Bama game, we had a video about this, and you mentioned it, so I got to ask you naturally. So who is your pick for OC?
And that's a good question. And the last thing I will add about Brent Venables, and I know people are going to love it that I'm going to mention this guy's name. I remember listening. I listen to Colin Coward. I don't care what people say. I listen to him, and I don't know. I heard this from him a long time ago, but really, I truly believe it. You know, when a coach is good, a head coach is good, when the side of the ball that they are from, whether the offense or defense, when they take over a job, does it get better? And there's a reason why they're a coordinator on one side of the ball. They know one side. And it's ever since Brent Venables has gotten here, every year this defense has gotten better. And it is now playing at an elite, I mean, really good to elite level week in and week out. And to me, that is the proof that he knows what he's doing. He just needs a competent offense to put up 25 to 30 points a game and not turn the ball over. That's all he needs. And I think he's going to find it. Who would it be? I mean, obviously, there's been talks of Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen would be a great hire. I don't think it's going to end up happening because I think Dan Mullen he's going to want a lot of money, which the money's not the deal. I think he wants to become another head coach again. And I think he probably wants to go to a place to either he can become the head coach there and kind of how Lincoln Riley took over for Bob Stoops, kind of find somewhere where someone's getting ready to retire, or go somewhere for a year or two, run a great offense and get a head coaching job immediately. The other guy that's been talked about is Ben Arbuckle, the guy from Washington State. I mean, he's young and he's literally like our age, like 29.
2014 high school class graduate, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Washington State's playing well. What would be interesting is that quarterback that he's coaching. Would that quarterback follow him? I forget the kid's name.
John
He's good. Mateer, yeah. I think it's going to be Ben Arbuckle. I'd be happy with it. I mean, at the end of the day, you want the young hot shot, and that's what we got in Zach Alley, and it's been a home run. However, I'll be honest, I probably would prefer Dan Mullen, and just because obviously it didn't end well with him at Florida, but Mullen knows what it takes, and he knows the SEC, and he's been there, he's done that. This hire is going to make or break Brent Venables.
Yes.
And this is pivotal. And the idea that he's got Zach Alley and Ben Arbuckle, late 20s, early 30s kind of guys running both sides of the ball. I mean, Zach Alley's good, but he's going to take another leap of faith this year or next year, at least with the defensive side of the ball. He's involved. So he can guide Zach Alley and do all that. The offense, I'm sure he understands it, of course, but he's going to turn the keys over to a young buck. And that's a guy that's playing in the Pac-2 or coaching in the Pac-2. It's nerve-wracking. I'm excited, and it could be a home run. I would prefer Dan Mullen, honestly. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be him. It's not the perfect fit.
I wouldn't hate the Dan Mullen hire. I am a guy who prefers Ben Arbuckle. We talked about it a while back, and at first he was my first choice. I kind of like Brennan Marion out there at UNLV. I liked GJ Kenny, at Texas State, but GJ Kenny just got a huge extension.
He got paid.
Staying there in Texas State. Brennan Marion, I think with Tulsa firing Kevin Wilson, I have a good feeling that Brennan Marion ends up being the head coach at Tulsa. That kind of leaves you with. I think Ben Arbuckle was great, though. I think he's the guy that's going to run a pretty fun offense. Yeah, I think it's only going to get better, assuming that you get those 5 receivers back. Your offensive line has an offseason to kind of gel. They are showing improvement. Maybe next year, maybe you play guys like EPL some more. Maybe, if Fasusi sticks around, maybe he's a guy that can compete right away. Or you get both the Jakes back. Ozida is looking good right now. There's a lot to like about I think if you're a guy like Ben Arbuckle looking at this team from an outside in spot, you get those 5 receivers back. If you bring John Mateer with you, although I still like Jackson Arnold, we'll see what happens. I think the offense could be, because you're right, it doesn't need to be a 45 points a game offense anymore. If we can be around 20, 25 points a game, we're going to be in every single game we play. And that's the reality of it. And so I think there's a lot to like, and I think Ben Arbuckle would be a pretty fun one.
And I'll tell you, I think Dan Mullen, obviously, most coaches want to become the guy at some point in their career or return to that point. I think another part of the reason why I think Dan Mullen's not going to be it is I think Dan Mullen will come in or would come in and want to bring his guys. And I think there'd be a lot of people that would be losing their job and who do well, who play well, coach well. I think a lot of people would lose their job. And Ben Arbuckle won't have as much leverage for that, and there can be continuity to keep Coach B. I know that's probably been a hot topic of conversation is him, and I think he should stay because if he's gone, then you can kiss Fesusi and
Faji.
I can't remember how to say his name.
Something like that, yeah.
Both those guys gone, and you'd kiss them goodbye. And you got DeMarco Murray, so I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. But now that we got your first half season, thoughts out of the way, let's move on to how fun of a night Saturday was. Me and Hose were lucky enough to be there. We got some tickets through a friend we sat with, had a good time. But I mean, you talk about, going into that game, you're 5-5. I don't think anybody really had super high expectations. We did the preview video. Hose and I both picked Alabama to win. Obviously with the hope that we were wrong, and we're very glad to be as wrong about it as we were. That was awesome. But if Oklahoma was going to win, I thought it was going to be kind of what we talked about there is we had to run the ball well. We had to take the ball away. Oklahoma did both of those things very, very well on Saturday night. I would never have expected it to be 24-3. That was the first time Alabama hasn't scored a touchdown in a game since 2010 or something like that. You talk about all 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, special teams. Oklahoma beat the shit out of Alabama on Saturday night. And that's something that I did not expect to be saying here on this recap video, but it's the reality of the situation. As Oklahoma went, played that game on senior night, which, you mentioned it in your first half season talk there, is guys like Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, Woody Washington, Ethan Downs, DeJoun Terry, guys who decided to come back when they could have had probably a pretty decent draft stock. For them to come back, the season goes the way it is, awesome. Really, really cool for them to, go out like that, especially on Owen Field. That was their last home game. Just all around, all 3 phases, beat the hell out of them, really from the opening kick on. That was a lot of fun.
And what's even crazier is I know you talked about all 3 phases. Zach Schmidt shanked a field goal. I mean, honestly, that first quarter, it was reminiscent to the entire season where it was painful. They were outplaying Alabama, and it was still 0-0, and then it was only 3-0 at one point. And it's just like, oh my gosh. And 3-3. You have the missed field goal, you have the wide open touchdown that Brennan Thompson threw, and it wasn't the greatest throw, should have been caught. It hit him in the hands, probably should have caught it, but should have been a better throw. I mean, you had that, and I mean, I guess you had the missed touchdown and then the missed field goal, and it just felt like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And
because I think the possession before or the possession after, I can't remember the order of it, Taylor Tatum he dropped the ball at the 25-yard line.
Before, yeah.
It's just because, I mean, I had the exact same thought. I was texting my brother during the game, man, and it just – because you're right. We're kicking the shit out of them, box score-wise. We're running the ball all over them. We're well over 5 yards of carry. Really, everything's working. Defense is playing with their hair on fire. But, yeah, I agree. I think the throw from Brennan Thompson wasn't great. Should have been caught still, wide up in the end zone. We got to make that play. But then for Schmidt to miss, Taylor Tatum to fumble, it just kind of felt like, man, the defense is going to keep us in the game for a long time like they always do. But at some point, It's going to break open. Yeah, you can't hold them forever. Something bad's going to happen, and then all of a sudden the floodgates are open, and it never came.
No, and what was great is they came into the game. They watched when Alabama played Vanderbilt. They watched that game plan from Vanderbilt. They were going to run the ball, and what was really nice to see was they didn't make it complicated. After Taylor Tatum fumbled, which he's extremely talented, but he can't hang on to the football for whatever reason, they were just going to run. So they brought in X, and you want to talk about a guy that was not on anyone's radar to start, week one. I look at him now as he's RB number one. I mean, Taylor Tatum is extremely talented, but can't hold on to the football and hold on to the football. That's job security right there. And he doesn't have the security right now. And Javonte Barnes just can't stay healthy. And what was nice is when it was working, they just stayed with it and just kept going and going and going. Like that Missouri game, that was part of the problem is it was working a little bit. Xavier Robinson was running well. I think he had 9 carries for 50 something yards, and they just stopped running them. And it just didn't make any sense. And they just didn't overcomplicate it. And they just took it to him. And the defense, Eli Bowen.
How good is that kid?
He might be the better Bowen.
I mean, no, it's not outrageous to say. I think, you look at him and Xavier Robinson both being freshmen, guys that didn't play at the beginning of the season, and now Xavier Robinson is a freak, and then you have Eli Bowen. I mean, for him to read that the way he did on that screen pass,
he was shocked that he even caught the football.
If anything, he almost overran it. He almost read it too well and was going to run past it because he kind of had to come back and one-hand it. And that kid's going to be so good. You look at the box score. That's what I was looking at real quick here while you were going on, while you were talking about. But 5.3 yards a carry, 260 rush yards for Oklahoma. Arnold and Robinson are well over 5 yards a carry. But then on the flip side, you look at Alabama, average 2.3 yards a carry. Jalen Milroe was held to under 170 passing yards. I think he was sacked 4 or 5 times. I've never seen Alabama get bullied so bad, both on both sides of the trenches, and that was it was magical to see.
Yeah, it was just, it looked like a team that wanted it and they were bought in, and to me, that's all I needed to see. I was talking, the way that this season's going to feel now, especially if you go on the road at LSU and beat them, which LSU is very vulnerable at this point. The feel of this season, finishing 7-5, is going to be similar to what Florida feels, because Florida's playing really well now. You feel like there's momentum and you're going to roll into the 2025 season. What's crazy is if OU didn't implode against Missouri, they're sitting here at 7-4 right now, potentially going 8-4 against LSU. And honestly, I would have thought that would have been a win at the start of the season with the schedule that they had. And a red shirt, Jackson Arnold at quarterback. I would have been 8-4. Yeah.
Not only that, if you decide to play 2 halves against Ole Miss, because you're looking great in the first half, you take a lead into halftime in Oxford. It's 14-10. You're starting to feel good. Then Ole Miss comes out that first half, or that first drive of the second half, just goes all the way down the field with ease, scores a touchdown, and then that's when the floodgates really did open up. And but I agree. I think this team could, despite everything, despite all these injuries, if you don't implode against Missouri, if you play 2 halves against Ole Miss, be 9-3. That's nuts. I mean, you're literally a couple plays, or a half, and literally that Missouri game a couple plays away from being at least 7-4, like you said. This team is as bad as it's been, as injured as it's been, to be a couple plays away from that it's really wild. But I think going back to your point at the beginning, I think that's it's a testament to Brent Venables. Whatever you want to say about it, like this team, I think he brought it up in his press conference, is essentially right now playing one hand tied behind their back, and they just keep going out there and keep fighting and keep believing, and it came true on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it did, and overall, it was just solid. Kip Lewis, and obviously, you got to start thinking about with these seniors leaving. Losing Terry's going to be tough, but you would think naturally David Stone would step in and fill that in. Jaden Jackson has been absolutely incredible. You look at the linebacker position. I mean, you've got Kip Lewis, who's going to run the defense next year. You feel really good there. McKenzie's been good. Sammy Omosigo has flashed. And you look at the defensive backfield, you've got Eli Bowen, obviously. That position is set. Peyton Bowen.
RSJ, I think, can come back next year.
RSJ will be back.
Kendall Dolby should be back from his injury. I think Gentry Williams will be back next season.
Hopefully, if he can avoid injuries. I mean, it hurts losing the players that they are, but it's going to be a defense that's going to be, probably the top third in the SEC. And if you can have a top third offense,
it's a real good team.
It's a real good team.
Schedule doesn't line up at all. Obviously, if anything, it gets tougher because you play the exact same schedule. But now you throw Michigan in as a non-con, and I get Michigan is not the Michigan team that won the national title, but it's still Michigan. And, they're just like Oklahoma. It's still Oklahoma. It's a down year right now for both programs, but they're going to do everything they can in the offseason to come back and be a real threat. But I think, the thing that plays well for Oklahoma is, man, if you can run that schedule and be a 10-2 team, 9-3 team, if you get into the playoff at all, there's really nothing you're going to see from anybody that you're going to be like, they're so much better than what you've already played. And I think there's highs and lows to a schedule that tough. You look at Texas right now, and this is just I'm going to go on a tangent now. They've played nobody. They have
in Penn State
I've ever seen in my life. They're going to get to the playoff, I think, no matter what happens. I think if A&M beats them on Saturday, they'll still get in. But they're going to get in that first round of the playoff and get the shit kicked out of them probably, because the one team that they've played that was good or whatever is Georgia, and Georgia kind of handled them at home in Austin in a primetime setting.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, for sure. I totally agree. I mean, overall, especially if they go on the road and beat LSU, even if they don't beat LSU, as long as they're competitive, you're rolling into next season, and hopefully, if they do beat LSU, we get to play like the Meineke Car Care Bowl. I'll never forget that one. Maybe the Guaranteed Rate Loan Bowl, or
go back to the Cheez-It Bowl. We got to get redemption from that first year.
Yeah, if you can win that bowl game, I know we're, Danny Stutzman and them, they're not going to play in that bowl game or whatever, which is totally fine. There's a chance that OU could end up with 8 wins on the year, and
nuts. If you had told me, after the Ole Miss game or whatever, that this team has a shot to go 8-5 at the end of the year, I'd say probably going to go 5-7. I think we'll beat Maine and then get ran out of the gym 2 times in a row, and they proved me wrong, and I'm so glad to be wrong. That was all I think. But yeah, you bring it up there. I think that keeping that bowl streak alive is something to hang your hat on and kind of be proud of. I think it's the second longest streak in the country now at 26 seasons or something like that. That's hard to do. That's really hard to do, especially in a year like this where you're so beat up. But shit was. I think I was telling you earlier, man. I think went to a lot of cool games in that stadium. I think Ohio State, when they came to Norman, if we won that game, could have been a little different because that was rocking. But a lot of fun ones. We won the Big 12 title over OSU at a home game there one year. I think, but in all the games, I think that was the most fun environment I've ever been to at that field. I think the fans showed up really well. The team kept us in it. There was never a moment where we were really out of it. playing real good music. We were loud. And beat the shit out of Alabama.
Yeah, I know. I mean, overall, you can't complain. You got to roll into next week, and if the momentum that they could build if they go on the road at Baton Rouge and win. Jackson Arnold played well. I I don't think OU will be able to make the decision on Jackson Arnold. I think that's up to Jackson Arnold, and I wouldn't be surprised if he left. But he might not. I don't know. It's going to be interesting because with Michael Hawkins and all that. So one of those two guys I think will be on the team next year.
I think so too. I think Hawkins probably more likely. I think with Malik Hawkins being part of the next class, I think with his dad being a guy who played at Oklahoma, I think it could mean more to Michael Hawkins, where Arnold doesn't really. Not that either one of them owe us anything, but I just feel like Hawkins is probably more inclined to stay just with those two reasons. But I don't know. It's college football now. Crazy shit could happen. I think if we hire Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer decides to come with him, who knows? Maybe they both, whatever.
Yeah, for sure. But overall, that was pretty good. Can't complain. But
it didn't suck.
No, it didn't. So, you have any final thoughts?
No, I mean it's fun to go into that Baton Rouge game now with a little bit of hope versus let's just get this shit over with and get the season over. And now we're feels like everything feels like you're back now. You're rejuvenated. You have reason to be excited as a fan again. You have something to look forward to, something to believe in, and I think just really cool for all the seniors to go out that way. I'm glad that was their last home game. No matter what happens next week, they can say that their very last home game, they beat the hell out of a really good team in Alabama.
For sure. And at the end of the day, going on the road, beating Brian Kelly, there's not many things better than that. So, but anyway, made it this far. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. Haven't forgotten. Do you still do the end of video challenge?
We haven't done it in a minute, but if you're back, you want to send one out, fire away.
End of video challenge, man. What's the LSU OU LSU game score?
That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna 27-21 Oklahoma, I'm riding a high.
I'm probably gonna pick 31-21 LSU.
All right, that's fair. I mean, that's fair. That's not a crazy thing. It's going to be a rocking environment. But again, no matter what happens, the boys earned that one. We got to watch them beat Alabama this season, and we're going bowling.
Yeah, we're going bowling. So catch you guys next time.
Sure.